has begun on the dictatorship of Fidel Castro.
During the Cold War, the United States was continually embarrassed to have a staunch ally of Moscow situated less than 150 miles off the coast of Florida. The situation was aggravated by a disastrous American-backed attempt by Cuban exiles to overthrow the left-wing regime of Fidel Castro in 1961. The ill-planned and badly managed landings of the Bay of Pigs by a CIA-trained brigade of Cuban exiles were total disasters. This abortive operation merely served to strengthen Castro's power base in Cuba. It also pitched him firmly into the Soviet camp. It was a monumental American blunder which a year later precipitated a crisis that very nearly triggered World War III. Cuba had attained independence from Spain as a result of the Spanish-American War of 1898. Up until the end of the 1950s, most Americans regarded Cuba merely as a holiday paradise. Castro embarked on a wholesale program of nationalization. This included the seizing of $1 billion worth of U.S. assets on the island. In retaliation, Washington refused to grant Cuba economic aid. Castro immediately turned to Moscow and through Soviet Foreign Minister Anasta Mikoyan secured a $100 million loan. He used some of this money to buy weapons from the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc states. Increasing nationalization drove thousands of Cubans into exile in the United States. They soon gained the support of a sympathetic U.S. government. In March 1960, a recommendation by CIA Chief Allen Dulles to arm and train Cuban exiles was accepted by President Eisenhower. The CIA set up secret training camps in Guatemala and Panama as a first step towards the liberation of Cuba. As Castro suspected, the CIA was also giving clandestine support to the guerrillas within Cuba itself. In 1960, Democrat John F. Kennedy ran against Richard Nixon for the presidency. With the Cold War growing in intensity, Kennedy accused the Eisenhower administration of complacency and demanded a more aggressive stance against Moscow. In the meantime, the CIA was developing its plan for Cuba. Cuban-crewed U.S. aircraft were to land exiles on the island. They would destroy Castro's air force and set up an alternative government. Active U.S. intervention would consolidate the new regime. In November 1960, Kennedy emerged triumphant from the presidential election. He would soon be reminded of his pledge to the Cuban exiles. It was a pledge he would have cause to regret. On January 22, 1961, almost as soon as he was installed in office, General Lyman Lemnitzer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and CIA Chief Allen Dulles visited Kennedy in the White House. They briefed him on the CIA's Cuba plan. Presidential aide Arthur Schlesinger advised against invasion, especially since he believed that it would be difficult to cover up American involvement in it. Kennedy, however, was conscious of his election demand for aggressive action against increasing communist influence in the world. He did not want to be accused by the Cuban exiles of backing out. CIA declarations that once landings had taken place, the Cuban people would support the invasion and turn against Castro also swayed him. Apart from Schlesinger, no one else in the meeting raised a dissenting voice. Kennedy made no decision. except to tell the CIA to continue planning. He appointed his brother Robert to oversee the operation. The CIA now warned Kennedy that Castro was about to receive Soviet combat aircraft. On April 4, 1961, he decided that the invasion should go ahead. The CIA also reiterated their confidence in the Cuban people supporting an invasion. Unfortunately, they had tailored their intelligence to justify their strategy. The final plan called for CIA B-26s crewed by exiles to bomb Cuban airfields and destroy Castro's air force. A 1,500-man invasion force would set sail from the Nicaraguan point of Puerto Cabezas and would land in the Bay of Pigs in the Giron area. Additional B-26 attacks would support the invaders. To distract Castro's forces, the CIA started rumors that the main attack would be in the Oriente province, and a diversionary landing was to be made here. There would also be a parachute drop at Giron. A U.S. Navy task force built around the carrier Essex would be offshore, and the exiles were led to believe that this would support them. On April 14th, the invasion fleet of 6 transports set sail from Puerto Cabezas. The following day, 8 B-26s attacked airfields in Cuba. They destroyed 3 aircraft, inflicted 51 casualties, and damaged buildings. The strike alerted Castro to the imminence of invasion. He ordered a mobilization of the country and immediately rounded up a large number of suspects, including most of the CIA agents in Cuba. Cuba raised the matter at the United Nations. The Cuban ambassador directly accused the United States of being behind the air attack. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Adlai Stevenson rejected this, stating that defecting Cuban pilots were responsible.
The United States has committed no aggression against Cuba, and no offensive has been launched from Florida or from any other part of the United States.
In truth, Stevenson had been kept in the dark that the CIA, who put Cuban markings on their own planes, had staged this defection. The planes themselves, contrary to what Stevenson had stated, had taken off from Florida. Those who flew them were Cuban exiles employed by the CIA. In spite of the Cuban protest on the afternoon of April 16, 1961, President Kennedy gave the final go-ahead for the invasion. But he canceled the diversionary Oriente landing and the 2 airstrikes scheduled for the day of the invasion. The die was now cast. In the early hours of April 17th, the landings began. The Cuban exiles were convinced that once they got ashore, they would take part in a march of triumph to Havana. CIA frogmen were the first to land, swimming in to mark the beaches, but they became involved in a firefight with local Cuban militiamen. Castro was quickly told of the attack. He ordered forces to be deployed to the Bay of Pigs. Meanwhile, the exiles seized the townships of Playa Largo and Giron and began preparing the airstrip at Giron for aircraft landings. Just after dawn, however, some of Castro's aircraft appeared over the beachhead. They attacked the anchored transports and hit 2 of them. The remainder withdrew, promising to return at nightfall. They never did so. This airstrike occurred at the same time that the parachute drop began on Giron. The airstrike caused mass confusion. Castro had taken personal charge of operations to repel the invaders. Cuban troops, some in newly acquired Soviet armored vehicles, were soon racing toward the Bay of Pigs. By nightfall, they had surrounded the beachhead and were exchanging fire with the exiles. There were casualties on both sides, but as more Cuban troops arrived, it became clear to the exiles that things were not going as planned. The Bay of Pigs was about to turn into a fiasco. On the day after the invasion, the exiles found themselves increasingly pinned down as Castro's forces surrounding the beachhead grew to 20,000 men, almost 20 times the strength of the exiles. Bitterly disappointed by the failure of their ships to return to the Bay of Pigs, the exiles now looked to the U.S. task force for support. That afternoon, their hopes were raised when U.S. Air Force F-100 Super Sabres flew over the beachhead, but these took no offensive action. That evening, as Castro's forces began to attack into the beachhead, the CIA pleaded with Kennedy to allow Essex aircraft to carry out attacks. The president would only sanction another B-26 strike the next morning with an escort from the carrier. 6 unmarked jets from the Essex flew over the beaches at dawn on April 19th. But the exiles' B-26s had arrived too early. Most were shot down. No more air support would be forthcoming. As the day wore on, it became clear to the exiles that Castro's forces were too strong and that they were trapped. They began to surrender. In all, 1,189 Cuban exiles were captured. 114 had been killed. Castro was quick to take advantage of the dismal failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion. He could now, with justification, portray the United States as the enemy, and the vast majority of Cubans accepted this. Indeed, the whole sorry saga merely served to dramatically strengthen his regime. As for Kennedy, after a few days of indecision, he was forced to admit U.S. involvement in the operation. He acknowledged that blunders had been made, but said that the American role had been restrained.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into this edition of Cigar Chat. In this edition, we're going to go ahead and talk to Mr. Gallinat, who was a participant in the Bay of Pigs invasion, which happened today, 60 years ago today, April 17th, 1961. So he's going to go ahead and talk to us about what happened that day, that fateful day, when the Bay of Pigs invasion was a failure, unfortunately. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here telling this story to you guys. I'd probably be in Cuba planting tobacco and making cigars, because that's my heritage and that's where I would have been. But there were definitely a lot of blunders and things that happened that day. So it's a fateful day in Cuban American history. And I wanted to go ahead and share this with you guys. So stay tuned and thanks for watching. Hi everyone. Welcome to this edition of Cigar Chat. Today I have my good friend J.R Gallinat here. He was a participant in the Bay of Pigs invasion. On a day like today, April 17th, 1961, today marks the 60th anniversary of the Bay of Pigs invasion. And I wanted him to have a few words here and tell us what went on during the invasion and the operation and stuff. So go ahead, Jose.
60 years since the disembark in Bahia de Cochinos. This is great for us, for the Cuban people. They abandoned us in the beach and in the sea. It's a shame, but I have to say it. But I want to thank the Central Intelligence Agency, because in 1998, they we're sorry. About 3-4 members of the Central Intelligence Agencies, they died in the Bay of Pigs. Today is a sad day for me. Could be victory,
Absolutely.
but for disgrace was defeat. I hope that in the future the United States government walk up to what happened and honor us, giving us our country back. With their help, we can do nothing. I'm sorry very much, but I'm glad that I was a participant in the Third Battalion Special Squad under the orders of Comandante Nino Diaz.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Gallinat.
Yes.
When did you become involved in the operation? How did that happen? I know you went to New York and you signed up.
I went to New York and I was recruited in New York. On April 1st, 1961, we put us in horse trucks, all black, and they took us to a compound. And we was trained there for 2 weeks, and we embarked in a ship that was called the Santa Ana.
Santa Ana.
Yes.
And then where did you guys train from there? Was it here in the United States or
Was
Central
here
America?
someplace in the United States, possible in the area of Mississippi,
Okay.
far as I know. Yes.
And then how many men were in your battalion?
We was all together about 160.
In
yes.
total, I think it was 1,500 men that participated in the
Yes,
invasion.
in total was about 1,500 men. About 40 of them was live in the United States fully trained, but they don't got time to put them on any ship at that time. Yes.
And I just want to say this to anybody that's watching. More men from the brigade here, from the 2506, killed more militiamen in Cuba than vice versa. So I think we did pretty good
Yes.
in that battle.
Was a very intense fight on the 20.
Murieron más milicianos. Es lo que te quiero-
Murieron,
Yeah.
yes. Maybe murieron around 1,000 milicianos or more. Yes.
About 1,000 of Castro's
Yes.
guys
Yes.
died in this invasion. So I
It
think
was a dead fight
yeah.
because one of the ships was destroyed completely with all the ammunition and weapons they got. So they fought with what they could for 3 days till the very end. The last message from the commander of the brigade to the American was, the enemy is in our door. Goodbye, friends.
That was a sad day. It was a very sad
Yeah,
day
it
today.
was a very sad
Today
day
is a
for
sad
me.
day in Cuban history, and you know, if the invasion would have, if it would have taken a different turn, we would not be here telling the story.
No, we'll be
in Cuba.
We'll be here in Cuba right
That's
now.
right,
But
that's right.
we're grateful to the United States because they give us a new country, a new way to live in. In Cuba was impossible for us anymore.
And you know, the other thing too is, when the invasion happened, it was 1961. Fidel had a lot of support still. Tenía mucho apoyo.
Yes,
He had a lot of people there in Cuba that were still supporting the government.
85-90% of the people was pro-Fidel at that time.
They were still
completely.
pro-Fidel.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was just a bad set of circumstances, and the fact that we did not have the air support, like Mr. Gallinat said, that was critical.
No,
Fue crítico.
the B-26 was mostly piloted by CIA personnel, and they got a lot of gas to fly, but they don't got the 50 caliber machine gun, and the T-33 took care of all of them. Yes.
We have a painting outside in the mural, que tú lo viste,
Yes.
of the B-26 that I had Mark paint on the mural out here, and it's a B-26 bomber plane with the Cuban insignias, which was the way that it was painted for the invasion, and I have that
Yes.
there as a memory to show people, you know, what happened on that fateful day.
Yeah, if you are in the area in Tarpon Spring, come and visit us, and we can give you a full history of what happened at that day.
That's right. And Mr. Gallinat is my friend. He's been working with me for years. He's like a member of the family, and you know, I learned a lot of stuff from him, a lot of history, a lot of information, stuff that you don't hear. So it's very interesting to be able to, you know, chronicle the story and hear it from somebody firsthand that, you know, that was
We'll
able
be
to
very
visit.
glad to have all of you as a visitor. Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, that's all.
All right, guys. Well, we'll try to put some more information together and compile a good video here about the invasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Have a great day.
Good. All right.
Fernando, so you're over here with Mr. Gallinat, huh?
Yes, I'm over here with Mr. Gallinat. We're going with talking a little about the history that's celebrating today. What is it? 25, 30 years of
60 years.
60 years
Of the Bay of
60
Pigs
years
invasion.
in the
The
Bay
Bay
of
of Pigs.
Pigs. And
Look like yesterday.
He did a little interview with me earlier, so It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you know, gotta look at that because this is history, living history right here.
A testimony.
It's living history about he was in it, he was involved in it.
Is there anything you want to ask him about the invasion?
Well, I just want to know, like, especially in that, how did you get involved? How did that start with?
Arriba Cuba.
Oye, lo que te preguntó Fernando, que cómo te involucraste,
Bueno, me recluté en Nueva York y me pasaron a Mississippi.
Say it in English, say it in
Y
English.
ahí nos montaron en un barco que se llama el Santana.
Dilo en inglés, dilo en inglés.
They recruit me in New York. We went to around Mississippi. They recruit, they put on in a book that was called Santana. And after that, everything is history. April 17, 1961. Defeat thanks to Kennedy. They crossed us, they leave us in the beach and in the sea too.
That's right.
We're paying the price
No air
right
support,
now.
unfortunately.
Yes, and he's here. He's still here. He's still here, and
He's still walking and crawling and laughing and smoking.
Yes,
Smoking cigars.
And he's still smoking cigars, which is a great thing.
That's the secret.
And I think later on we're gonna have a little bit more conversation with him,
And this
little by
is
little.
the bottom of the brigade.
Oh, that's a.
Let's go ahead and show Brigade 2506.
2506.
Lapel pin. Yep, there it is. Thanks for your service, Captain.
Yeah, thank you for-
The ultimate sacrifice to
Thank you for your
Cuban
service.
freedom.
And that's something really good that people.
And he was
should-
in the U.S. Army as well.
He was in the U.S. Army. He was in Invasion of Pig. Worked for the United States. So I think it's a
Cuban
good
Army
thing.
too, yeah.
You know that. we
¿Dónde
should
está el
know-
botón suyo?
My, you gotta give me one. You gotta give me one.
All right, man. I'm gonna sign off.
Only
All right, buddy.
member of the
See you,
brigade
Ray.
can wear that bottom.
only the member of the brigade. All
That's
right.
right. Willie, what do you think? You're over here with the captain, huh?
I haven't seen him in a while. You know, it's it's a privilege again to see him here.
Vivito y coleando, ¿eh?
Vivito y coleando. Y da la casualidad que hoy cumple 60 años.
60 years
60 years
of the Bay of Pigs
of the
invasion.
Bay of Pigs invasion.
Isn't that something?
And it's an honor to know a caliber of a person like Gallinat
That did
is
the ultimate sacrifice.
that
yeah.
did the ultimate sacrifice, and
Yeah.
he lived through it,
And to tell the story. Yeah,
and to tell the story,
absolutely.
you know, here in famous Tarpon Springs.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and again, here
I know you've been asking
in
about
the
him, so I wanted you to
infamous-
see him.
in the
Yeah.
infamous
Oh my God.
cigar shop.
The infamous cigar.
The infamous.
Guardaespaldas se cuenta cuando se valió a tiro con la
Thank you,
policía
man.
en Miami.
Always.
Oh yeah, there you go, man. So you're over here with the captain.
Uh-huh.
He was in the Bay of Pigs. He was a participant back in '61.
That's awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's a
that's
video.
history. It's una historia.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say?
Y nos traicionaron, traidores.
Traidores.
Is there anything you want to say, Cesar?
Just, it's an honor and a pleasure to be standing
Nos
next to this great
traicionaron,
man.
nos dejaron en la playa y en el barco.
Mira para eso.
No en barco.
Today makes 80 years, but 60 years. 60 years.
60 años.
Nos vendieron como puerco, coño.
Coño, caballero.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Here's the beautiful mural that Mark painted out here in the building. And of course, it's got different elements here. The Tarpon Springs buoy, the sponge diver. It has our Cuban buddy over here smoking a cigar. And the Malecón in Cuba. And there is the fortress, the Morro Castle. But of course, this is what I was talking to you guys about, is the B-26 bomber from the Bay of Pigs invasion. And today makes 60 years of that fateful day. Cuban history could have been different, but unfortunately it took a turn for the worst. But we have the memory here, the B-26 fighter pilot.